decision and open the case for a second appeal.
I need the toilet, so I might be moving around quite a lot. Just don't grab it. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking. I've got 2 points for you today. The first being why we can do this in terms of rights, and the second being the nature of consent. And they all fall under this idea of why mentally ill people in particular are different in this case. But before I do, I've got a little bit of rebuttal to Anthony's speech. Most of it will weave through my first point. But just a couple of things. First, this idea that he hung his case on economics, about how you fiscally cannot do this, it's too much of a cost. Firstly, he said that, firstly he said that adoption doesn't cost anything, because they just go to parents. No, firstly, Anthony, you have to go through a foster system, where it does cost something to say. You can't just get a kid and give it to the next, it's not like a queue of parents. There is some sort of system in place that the kid has to go through, which does cost much. And secondly, this idea of the pill, of how it's too much, you can't give everyone the pill, it's too much. We already do it. You can get the pill for free in this country if you speak to your doctor. We already provide the pill for free. It's ridiculous to say that we can't give it to mentally ill people because it just costs too damn much. Also, he said this idea that mentally ill people are all like Stephen Hawking and Rain Man. They all provide something really, really useful to our society. They're all dead good at maths. Well, no. The difference here is that they are mentally under the age of 16, therefore actually aren't like Rain Man. They're all. These people in particular are those who don't contribute to society in a functioning manner. But that links me to my first point, is that why mentally ill people have different rights in particular to other people in society. And this is quite a complex point, so listen to this closely first. This idea that when do rights change in society? Well, we say that when your relationship with society or the government is detrimentally affected by what you do, the actions that you can fulfill. So, i.e. they become irrational actors, because we cannot expect the same responsibilities to befall a mentally ill person as we can a stable person. And therefore the government, I'll tell you in a minute, the government fulfills this role of protecting society against their ability their inability to fulfil certain responsibilities. I'll take them.
Are you going to prove that these mentally ill people are bad people and they deserve this punishment?
No, we're not saying they're bad people. We're saying they're fundamentally different people who can't contribute to society in the same way. And because they can't contribute to society in the same way, we cannot bestow on them the same rights that we do as everyone else. Because they will most likely give birth to a child who becomes a burden on the state. And therefore their right to have a child changes because they cannot fulfill the responsibility of properly parenting that child. So what basically we have to do is prevent them begatting a further dysfunctional relationship in society. No, thank you. And secondly, this point of how you're assuming that they're going to be mentally ill, and you can't do that because the unborn child has rights. No, they don't, Madam Speaker. Unborn children don't have rights. People who don't exist don't have rights. People who don't have consciences don't have rights. It's ridiculous to think that they do. And so now to move on to this point of consent and the nature of consent. Well, we say that when an individual decides to have sex, they assume certain risks. They assume the possibility of the two people having sex will result in a child. But because a mentally ill person is fundamentally irrational, we say they cannot assume those risks, Madam Speaker. They cannot properly fulfil the role that a sexual contract suggests that they need to. It's specifically in the case of them being mentally the age of 16. Because we say if you're the age of 16, you do not fully have the ability to consciously make the decision that a sexual contract dictates to you. So therefore, you cannot. What happens then? The government fulfills the role of the mentally ill person in that relationship. The government becomes the active stakeholder, and therefore the government has to be the one the government is the one who faces the burden of a child. Because if you have a child in a mentally disabled family, the chances are that because the power paradigm in that relationship has shifted so much towards the healthy person over the mentally ill person, i.e. the mentally ill person cannot fully consent, so the power is with the stable person, there is a serious possibility for abuse of that relationship. And if there's abuse of that relationship, the existence of a child in that relationship suggests that the child will be abused also. And because the government is a stakeholder in the relationship, it becomes the government role to prevent the possibility of abuse, therefore prevent the ability of these mentally ill people to have children. So, Madam Speaker, what have I told you today? I've told you that the rights when you are mentally ill are not the same as those when you are a stable person, because the government has to interact with you in a different way, because you cannot fulfil the same responsibilities. And I've also told you that the nature of consent fundamentally changes, because you cannot assume the risks that a sexual contract suggests that you have to. I.e., you cannot fully understand the implications of that of having a child to your economic, your social, and your political impact in society, and therefore the government has to take that decision for you. In this case, we say that they have to take it in the way that means they cannot have a child, because the possibilities of abuse and the possibilities of them being a detrimental effect to society are too great Madam Speaker. So we urge you to propose this motion.